listening to Oilersnation Radio, a member of the Nation network of podcasts and delivered by DoorDash. 1 hour of straight hockey talk with Dan, Rick, Tyler, and Bag Milk starts now.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Oilersnation Radio, episode 152. It's a big day here, busy week, lots of stuff going on. I am Bagged Milk here with Nation Dan, Tyler Yaremchuk, and Zachary Lang filling in for Rick. We're going to break down the week that was. Something happened today in the world of Oilers. If you're not paying attention, we'll get to it. We'll get to it in just a minute. But first, I want to thank our friends at Sherwood Ford the Giant for making this all possible. Thank you, Sherwood Ford. I appreciate you. Though, again, I'm looking out at my parking spot and I do not see a Bronco there. Must be on back order. Dan, you got a Bronco outside your house?
No Bronco here. No Bronco sighting confirmed.
All right. Must be on back order. It's the only explanation. It's either that or they cannot find them like the 1987 Ford Escort GT. But that's just a different story entirely. Go ahead and follow Sherwood Ford on Twitter at Sherwood Ford and on Instagram at Sherwood Ford _the Giant. Mr. Yaremchuk.
Yes.
Welcome back to Oilers Nation Radio.
Thank you. I'm happy to be back, and I'm happy to be bringing a brand new Sherwood Ford Giant question. Obviously, the Darnell Nurse topic is going to take up a bulk of the show, but that news broke after I already came up with the Sherwood Ford Giant question. We're not going to let it go to waste. And I made a graphic. So, like, really, we're in too deep with this Giant question. Shout out to Sherwood Ford. The question is, who will be the Oilers' two goalies on opening night? I mean, the easy money choice is definitely Koskinen and Smith, but we do have Alex Stalock, who is putting in work this offseason out at the Beauty League. And there's also the little rumor floating around from Jeff Merrick about maybe it's Anton Hudobin or someone out of Dallas because they have a bit of a situation going on there as well. So that's a Giant question. Who will be the Oilers' two goaltenders next season?
Before we get to it, what is the Beauty League?
It's basically like an off-season group of like NHLers and pro hockey players that just like play organized games for like 10 days or whatever, however long.
Is that what Connor was doing? Is that what Connor was doing the other day? It just looked like he was playing shitty with some random people.
Yeah, I think he was just hanging out with some beer leaguers or something.
Could you imagine showing up to the rink? Showing up to the rink, you're like, all right, boys, we got 8 guys tonight, and one of them is Connor McDavid. Let's go.
I think Connor, you have to skate backwards and shoot right-handed.
Or it's your first game you've been called up to sub in for, and then they're like, oh, yeah, we also have a guy named Connor McDavid here. Go ahead, see what you got.
Like, I would imagine in a situation like that, Connor would, he wouldn't be Connor McDavid, but I hope he gave them a couple of tastes.
Absolutely.
Just a couple. Just to like show them where the bear shits, you know what I mean? Just a little bit. Let them know,
one guy checks him really hard, and he just gives him the afterburner on the next one-on-one, the next shift.
Or just like unreal. Some kind of greasy dangle on him that just like leaves the guy completely naked on the ice, jockstrap in the stands. I don't know. I can see it. I hope he gave him just a little bit. Just a little bit. All right, back to the Sherwood Ford Giant question about the Edmonton Oilers goaltending. As of today, August 6th, Friday afternoon at about 2:30, still Mike Smith and Mikko Koskinen, but that could change. There's about 60 some odd days left until the season goes. Plenty of time to make some moves. Now, what will happen? Personally, I'll start it off. I think it's just going to be Smith and Mikko. I think that we're going back to the well for a third time. I don't particularly like the idea all that much. But I'm also not completely devastated by it. However, it's a little bit of risky business by Ken Holland because you need Mike Smith to perform at the level he was at last year, and you need Mikko Koskinen to not allow 4 goals on 4 shots. So risky. Not the worst goaltending the Oilers have had by any means. I mean, I remember the Fath Scrivens. That was a tough one, So this isn't the worst goaltending duo they've had. It's not the best. It's kind of somewhere in the middle. So that's what I'm going to say. I bet the same 2 guys are back, and they split the games relatively evenly as they have the entire time that Dave Tippett's been here. That is my bet. Final answer. Who's next? Dan, you're up.
Well, it could be worse. We could have the combination of Craig Anderson and Aaron Dell, or we could have the combination.
Craig Anderson still plays hockey?
He did sign
He came out of retirement to sign with the Buffalo Sabres.
Or you could have the goaltending tandem of Carter Hutton and Joseph Kornar. So, yeah, you're right, Bag Milk. Not the worst goaltending tandem in the league. Last year I went in, I think, a little bit more positive than I will this year, just because I was more positive on Mikko Koskinen than I think anybody ever should have been. But, I took my licks on that one. I don't trust Mikko Koskinen this year. I think that for this team to be successful, we're going to end up making a goaltending trade at some point. I hope it's before the season, but I'm kind of with Bag Milk in that I think it's going to start this year with Mike Smith and Mikko in net. And once Ken Holland finds out that gamble didn't work out, he's going to have to do some work to bring in a goalie to back that up.
Zach, you're up.
I'm going to go with the Khudobin angle. I think, I guess this is me being a little pessimistic here. I'd like to see them bring in Anton Khudobin. Do I realistically think it's going to happen? Probably not. The Oilers have to get rid of Mikko Koskinen somehow, and they don't have a lot of cap space. They don't really have a lot of assets to do that anymore. So I don't really think the options are there for the Oilers, and I think that they maybe sat out of their hands a little bit too much through this whole process. You look at the way the goalie carousel rather.
We need more Garys, though, to be honest.
You can never have enough Garys. The way the carousel spun, Edmonton didn't even really seem to get very far into it. Like, of course, we had the conversations with Darcy Kemper, and, there was a discrepancy in the offers there, and Edmonton couldn't get it done. And it was a tough spot for the team to be in. And I think they should have put more focus on making the goaltending situation more of a priority. Will Koskinen be solid? I expect him to, if he's the starter next year, or the 1A or the 1B, however you want to do it. But I don't think that Mikko Koskinen and Mike Smith as your two goaltenders are a recipe for success with the defense that you got right now.
So you wrote about it earlier in the week on Oilersnation.com, and just to transcribed from the 30, 31, 32 Thoughts podcast with Merrick and Friedman, Jeff Merrick says, as of right now, they're going back with Koskinen and Smith. Friedman responds, I got to think that's going to change. So maybe. Merrick goes back. There were talks with Buffalo. Yes. With Koskinen, and then the Kemper deal to Colorado, blah, blah, blah. But I would not be surprised if come opening night, it's Anton Khudobin starting netminder from the Edmonton Oilers. So that's Jeff Merrick. And Friedman responds with, yeah, I think that's a fair one, I guess. I agree with you. I think Dallas is going to move a goalie. So it's possible. It's doable. Dallas is collecting goalies.
But this is the weird thing too, because it's not like they can take back Koskinen, right? Because they already have Ben Bishop, and they signed Braden Holtby. So it has to be some kind of like three-way deal, or Holland has to be able to move Koskinen while knowing that he has a deal in place for Khudobin, right? And if one thing falls apart, then they're left without a dance partner.
Yeah, like it would have to be a three-way deal between Edmonton, Dallas, then one of Arizona or Buffalo. And also, shout out to Pistol Pete, because Koskinen has a 15-team no-trade list. So
that's right.
If Mikko Koskinen doesn't want to go to Arizona or Buffalo, it's kind of in his control to not go to Arizona or Buffalo, right? So that's an interesting wrinkle to all this as well. And that's kind of why I don't think they're going to acquire a goalie. Khudobin as well has 2 years left, right? So you'd be basically committing to a Khudobin-Smith combo for the next 2 seasons if you were to go down that route. And I'm not a huge fan of that. There's a part of me that does just think, take the easy answer. It's Smith and it's Koskinen. And I've always been more of a Koskinen supporter than hater when you look at kind of the spectrum of how Oilers fans view the massive Finnish backstopper. But I think maybe we're not giving enough love to Alex Stalock in this situation. And I understand that he hasn't played a ton of hockey, but the last time he was between the pipes and active, he was pretty good for the Minnesota Wild. Yes, he's 34 years old. He only has
That's young on this team, baby.
Yeah. And he only has whatever it is, 150 career games under his belt as well. But this guy's clearly motivated. We're seeing the highlights of him. He had a 267 goals against average and a 910 save percentage in 2019-20 with Minnesota. I don't think it's a totally out of left field idea for Alex Stalock to come in and steal this job, especially because we kind of know now they don't like Mikko Koskinen. Ken Holland said, when Ken Holland comes out and goes, if I wanted to be in on the goalie market, I would have had to trade a goalie. He's not talking about trading Mike Smith.
No, he just signed him.
So,
and what does that say to Mikko Koskinen too? What kind of a message does that send to your goaltender, right? I don't think it sends a very good message, right? Obviously, the Oilers clearly don't value him very much for what he is right now, and that's going to be a hard spot for Mikko to be in too. So maybe, who knows? He says, well, if you can trade me to Buffalo or Arizona, then trade me, because clearly they might value me more than you guys do right now.
He is in a contract year, and not that I necessarily think Mikko Koskinen's, going to get another NHL contract. I have a funny feeling he's going back to the KHL after this season, but he could be sitting there as well, like you said, Zach, and going, I probably don't want to play in Buffalo or Arizona. They're going to be the two worst teams in the NHL in all likelihood, but he could be sitting there. And if the Oilers say, we're sending you to Bakersfield to play behind Konovalov or Skinner, Koskinen might just sit there and go, what's better than playing 25 games in the American League, playing all 50 for the Buffalo Sabres and getting my reps in, right?
Yep. And also if they were able to land something for Koskinen, again, I would imagine they'd have to retain the salary because who's taking the full rip on that thing? But it would make for a cheaper, goaltending duo if it was Stalock. It'll be interesting to see. Stalock wants a job. It's not like he's just going to be like, I don't want to play in this league anymore. So
of course, and it's the way I look at it too. Like I think a guy like Konovalov can actually challenge for NHL minutes this year. I really think he can. Like I keep looking back at Igor Shesterkin and Ilya Sorokin, both young goaltenders in the KHL who came over to North America. They were playing in NHL minutes in short order. Shesterkin went to the American League. He played half the season there, posted like a .932 save percentage, and basically forced the Rangers to call him up. So maybe that's a situation where you run into with the Oilers here, where all of a sudden Konovalov goes to the American League, starts the year red hot. Then you can dump a guy like Koskinen on whoever team and call up Konovalov, and then you go with him and Smith. I think there's a lot of options. And
talking about Konovalov or Konovalov?
I'm going to Elite Prospects right now to find out the answer.
Dan, we're going to have to press the play button on that one.
Okay, first off, 23 years old. And I know he's undersized. He's only listed at 5'11".
I was going to say 5'11", small for a goalie these days.
But this guy has now been playing. He has basically 3 full seasons in the KHL under his belt. He's been playing in, what is arguably the second or third best league in the world. 229 goals against average, 923 save percentage last year. Those are legit numbers. And I like that point, Zach. You brought up the comparison to Shesterkin and I forget the name out in Long Island. Sorokin. Those guys didn't mess around when they came over to North America. You would think. What are you going to say?
He did only play 19 games last year.
But you got to. So this is something too people keep bringing up to me. Oh, well, Eddie Pascal ended up beating out Konovalov for minutes in the KHL. Well, at that point, they already knew that he was going to be leaving for North America. So I think that's why they got Pascal playing more, get him more reps, because he's going to be their guy in the future, right?
Pascal just seemed like, to me at least, looking from the outside in, obviously I'm not a Lokomotiv Yaroslav fan.
How dare you?
I know, but not since they fired Craig McTavish in the preseason. Thank you very much.
Dare they?
But was that a different team, Tyler?
No, that was the same team.
Okay, perfect. So it just looks like Pascal had good numbers, and that's maybe he lost a goaltending battle. Like, it's the way it goes sometimes. But yeah, I don't know. I think he has to force our hands in Bakersfield before we make that move.
And
what about
a name?
What about a different name nobody's talking about? You guys know who it is?
Stuart
Skinner.
Steph LeBay.
Right. Why not?
Smaller nets in hockey,
man.
Right?
Her composure in those penalty shots. Like, if she was doing
amazing.
If she was doing a shootout in hockey, she'd be at the blue line staring them down, smiling at them with her helmet off, like gloves and pads on the ground. She's just mocking them, openly taunting them. Like,
wouldn't you love to know what she was saying to the Swedish players right before she went back to the goal line?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
the swagger and the confidence to do that, to do that in any sort of athletic situation, but gold medal penalty kicks at the Olympics, and you're like, oh yeah, I'm confident enough in myself that I'm going to stare them down and be chirping. It's unreal. Unreal.
What was awesome too is this one Swedish player actually scored on her after she did that. And then she just kept doing it. She didn't deter her from getting back in their
not
face.
One iota.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm that respect.
I'm just throwing it out there. Outside option. If we're going to get creative, maybe save a little money between the pipes. Hey, Steph LeBay, gold medalist. Why not? Right. It's going to be interesting to see though, for real, goaltending can sink you or push you forward. We talked about it plenty of times in this podcast. Montreal Canadiens made the Stanley Cup Finals because Carey Price stood on his head. That's not to discount what the rest of the team did, but let's be honest. If Price doesn't do what Price did, they're not making the Stanley Cup Final. So it's going to be an interesting question, because you're banking on it. Like I said, it's risky business here because we're banking on Mike Smith to come back and perform the same way he did, and he can. But we also need. It's also a different season. There's no more 3-game sets in cities. There's a lot more travel. It's back to the usual shtick. So
no Ottawa.
Now here's a name to throw out there. There is one goaltender still on the market who I could potentially see the Oilers signing. Devin Dubnyk. He's still looking for a job.
Oh no.
Would Doobie come back? I don't know. Like I don't think it's the best.
It's a value contract.
I think it's as risky. Yeah, I think it's as risky as running with Koskinen and Smith, right? But hey, again, if the Oilers are able to move Koskinen, hey, Doobie, what the hell?
Were his numbers not worse than Koskinen last year?
Oh yeah, his numbers were not.
Let me throw out another free agent name that's still out there.
Go for it.
How about the King, Henrik Lundqvist?
Oh, I'd love it. Bring him in.
Could you imagine?
Oh, man.
905 save percentage last time he played, which was back in 1920 with the Rangers. I mean, maybe a little PTO action here. Uncle Ken likes his old goalies.
If they can convince the King, that'd be cool.
He would up the style game on this team. Like, man, if Duncan Keith's going to teach some boys some lessons on the back end, old Henrik would teach everybody how to dress for success, even though he's never.
Can you imagine back in 2012 if someone had been like, hey, the Oilers could have Henrik Lundqvist for free and he'll be playing on a team with Duncan Keith. Like, how excited would the 2012 version of yourself be at the idea of that?
I tweeted something similar after the Nugent Hopkins extension where it's like, I traveled back in time to 2011 when Nuge got drafted and we're like, hey buddy, we're in 2021. You just signed an 8-year extension. You're here for life, more or less. Really? What else happened? Oilers traded for Duncan Keith. Wow, everybody must be excited. No, everybody fucking hated it. Really?
Oh boy.
Good times. Well, goaltending. It's going to be a topic for the next 60 plus days here until we get going. And even then it still won't stop. But to Tyler's point, I could see Alex Stalock trying to steal somebody's job here.
Yep.
And by somebody, I'm talking about a very tall Finnish man. So
we'll see. You know what? He's going to be the freshest guy out there, right? Yeah. Like he hasn't faced a ton of NHL action. As you mentioned, Tyler, only 150 NHL games. Like that's not a lot of work for a guy who's 34 years old, right? And he looked good too. Like he carried Minnesota in the playoffs at what was it, 2 years ago, I think? Like he got him into the second round or something like that, right? Yeah. So stranger things have happened, right?
We shall see.
The other thing too, this is, you guys mentioned it, but we're back to an 82 game season here. Mike Smith hasn't played 40 games in either of the last 2 seasons, and he's a year older. And I'm not saying his play is going to slip off, but he was hurt last year. There's a good chance the Oilers actually need all 3 of Koskinen, Smith, and Stalock.
That's also possible. I hadn't thought about that till just now, so thank you for ruining my afternoon, but thank you.
Well, yes. and to that point as well, I think everybody kind of, we all, right before the pandemic in December, we all kind of thought Mike Smith was hurt and playing through it because he was absolutely horrendous in December, but he just seemed to not want to give up the net. And so I would say that Smith has been argued in both seasons he's been here at our net. So it's a reality.
I'd argue that if I ever have to give up watching the Edmonton Oilers, I'm going to become a full-time ping pong fan because I've been watching ping pong in the Olympics nonstop, and that shit is amazing. I was watching doubles the other night. Ridiculous.
You can get some risky business on that, hey? Like there's odds out there for ping pong.
I saw, but I was just like, what do you? Okay. Like the other day I was watching doubles. I'm like, how the fuck does this work? And they had to alternate shots, and I'm like, oh my God, this is the best. But you know what else is the best? And as I've said for years now, Dan, our friends at DoorDash. Every week I tell you to order something from DoorDash. And I tell you, they are here for you. That's why if you go to download DoorDash on your phone and you use the promo code ONRadioDD, ONRadioDD is in DoorDash, you will get 25% off your first order and no delivery fee. Again, download DoorDash, ONRadioDD. I always tell you, now's the time.
Let DoorDash be your DD.
That's right. You can't cook anyway. If you're listening to this, chances are you can't cook. Let's be honest. Order yourself something to eat.
And your food can't drive.
That's
so
true.
DoorDash is the DD for your food to get to you.
That's true. Without DoorDash, you may not eat tonight. Just think about that. All right, boys. Obviously, we have to talk about the biggest thing that's happened around here in a minute. About an hour before we started recording today, it was announced that the Edmonton Oilers had signed Darnell Nurse to an 8-year contract extension with an annual value of $9.25 million. Whoo, boy, the Brinks truck backed up to Daryl's house.
Yeah, Daryl got paid. Good for him.
Everybody compose themselves for a second, collect their thoughts. Let's get into it. Darnell Nurse contract extension. So he's still got 1 year left on this current deal. Then he kicks off this monster deal. Defenseman got paid this summer, boys. I'll tell you. I'll start off with you, Tyler. What do you think? Darnell Nurse contract extension.
I like the move. Like, I don't love it, obviously. Anytime you're like clearly paying market value or slightly above market value for a player, it's not a great deal for the Edmonton Oilers. But this is a deal that had to get done. Finding top pairing defensemen is next to impossible. Really, the best way to get them, and the only way you're going to get them 9 times out of 10, is if you draft them and develop them yourself. And that's exactly what we've seen with Darnell Nurse. And I see a lot of people, upset about the 8 years, saying he's not worth 9.25 because he's not a top 5 D-man in the NHL. And I get some of the hesitancy in this deal. But the bottom line is, he is their best defenseman pretty clearly. And he handled top pairing minutes and excelled in top pairing minutes last season with the Edmonton Oilers. Don't play hardball with that guy. You don't want to lose that guy. You don't run the risk of him having another monster year and suddenly being worth $10 million next offseason, or him walking like Adam Larson did. You get this deal done. I'm happy that the Oilers did it. And the other thing too, one, you're buying 8 years of unrestricted free agent seasons, which that costs you a lot in today's NHL. And also, it's not like Darnell Nurse is 29 years old and they're committing to him for 8 years. And he just had a breakout season at 28 after being like a journeyman for a few years. He's actually kind of followed a pretty typical progression for a defenseman, for a young D-man, right? Like, we all know it kind of takes you 250 to 300 games or whatever it is to really figure out what a D-man is. And Nurse had that season at 26. So he's going to be paid now from his, this will kick in his like age 27 season until he's 35. That's a D-man's prime. Like, I think this is a really good deal to be signed. He's clearly a valued part of their core. There's just not a lot for me to dislike when it comes to this.
What I'll say is, if you're going to dislike this contract and you're an Oilers fan, we got to be pointing fingers elsewhere, because that's what started it. You know what I mean? We're talking about Jones in Chicago, Dougie Hamilton, Zach Werenski. They all got banked. So if you were expecting Darnell Nurse to come in with like a $6 million cap hit or $7 million cap hit or something, it wasn't going to happen. And I think it's a little bit much, but you know what? It's like Tyler said, what are you going to do?
Well, and that's just it, Bag Milk. It's the team signed 2 bridge deals for a guy, and we gambled, and some might say we lost right now. There's others that say that we're in a good spot as it is. And I expect Darnell Nurse to continue to disappoint his haters, because he continues to get better and better and play as a number 1 defenseman. And if we had Cale Makar on this team, Darnell Nurse isn't our number 1 defenseman, but he is our number 1 defenseman. And, you can say he's not Cale Makar, but there's 30 number 1 defensemen in the league. There's 31 number 1 defensemen in the league, and Darnell Nurse is amongst that group because of the situation we have him in. We have him now in Edmonton Oilers jersey for another 9 years. So get used to it, be happy with it, and let's go Oilers, and let's go Darnell Nurse.
And there's another thing too, Dan. It's let's not discount how close Connor McDavid and Darnell Nurse are, right? I think that 100%. You kind of have to consider that a little bit, because everybody was talking about what was it, a couple of weeks ago, Zach? We were talking about maybe a 4 or 5 year extension for Darnell Nurse, as opposed to this max term 8. So if you think about it that way, this is one of Connor McDavid's good buddies. And I know that doesn't necessarily mean everything, but that guy, that's probably as close to Connor as anybody, just signed a max term deal that'll keep him at Edmonton for 9 years. If you don't think that will, at least on a human level, speak to the captain, and also, also Leon Draisaitl. Same with Nuge's extension. Of course it will. These guys are still people. They're still humans. And I don't know how many times Connor wants to see his good buddies traded away from this hockey club. And I know you don't just maintain friendships and that's how you build a hockey team. I get all that. But if you think it doesn't matter, of course it does. Right?
Well, yeah. I mean, what were the Oilers supposed to do here? Like, let him walk to free agency? Like, no, that's not going to happen. What are they going to do? Try and trade him for a package of picks and prospects? That's not going to happen. The Oilers are clearly in a win now mode, and Darnell Nurse is the Oilers' number 1 defenseman. like people are acting there so surprised by the fact that Darnell Nurse is getting paid. Like the big mistake the Oilers made was bridging Darnell Nurse twice.
Yeah.
Like they should have tried to lock him up earlier. A year and a half ago, they signed him to that 2-year extension. That should have been when the Oilers said, you know what? Okay, we'll pay you 8 years. We'll pay you $7.5 million, $7 million a year annually. Boom, you're locked in, right? Instead of, like Dan mentioned, gambling on, Darnell Nurse as a player, right? Like, I love the people online that are like, oh, well, the Oilers should be trading him for picks and packages if that's what the ask is going to be. Well, we have to be realistic. That's not really how the NHL, let alone the Edmonton Oilers, operate here. They're in a win-now mode. He's the team's number one defenseman. And at the end of the day, Ken Holland isn't signing contracts right now worrying about what's going to happen 6, 7, 8 years down the road, right? Like Ken Holland's here right now trying to build a winner. He's signing contracts like he knows that he's trying to build a winner right now. He's not worried about, 6, 7, 8 years down the road. That's for the next general manager to worry about, right? At the end of the day, as Frank Saravalli noted, friend of us all on Daily Faceoff this week, the cap is going to be probably jumping 26, 27. So what happens, at that point in time when the cap is all of a sudden climbing rapidly, Darnell Nurse's contract might look like a steal at that point in time. And that's what we have to hope for. We have to hope that Darnell Nurse continues to get better. Yes, we're probably going to see some regression in his shooting. He's not going to shoot at 10%, 12% again next year. It's just not going to happen. So I don't know what the Oilers' other options were. There really wasn't any other option. And you got to lock up your guy long-term like this.
And again, people acting like it's a gross overpay. Like, do I think it's a little bit of an overpay? Yeah, I think so. But also, like, when you go to when this contract kicks in 2022, 2023, there will be a grand total of 15 defensemen in the NHL who make who have cap hits of $8 million or more. So that'll be kind of in the neighborhood of Darnell Nurse, let's say. How many of them are 27 or younger? It's Thomas Chabot, Miro Heiskanen, Cale Makar, and then it's Darnell Nurse, Zach Werenski. Like, again, this is what a good young defenseman kind of has to get on the open market. And the Oilers are eating UFA years. And I like the point you made about the bridge deals too. If the Oilers wanted to get him done to a bargain deal, you needed to sign him before this point, right? Like they did with Leon Draisaitl. I was one of the people when they signed Draisaitl, it was like, that's too much money. It's $2 million too much. What are they thinking? Okay, well, now he's on one of the best contracts in the NHL. And that's what you get when you take the risk of not bridging a young player. But when you bridge a guy, you're also taking the risk that they go supernova, explode, become a number one D-man, then you got to pay him like one.
Yeah, I think the lesson, if anything, is if you believe in a guy, maybe extend him. Extend him because, like you guys both said, back-to-back bridge deals, and then they started negotiation. First of all, when the market took off like crazy for defensemen. Secondly, he had his best year of his career. Like if you're negotiating from a position of strength, Darnell Nurse, he had it and he got the bag for it.
Yeah, the Oilers literally had no leverage in this situation. They had none.
Well, and if you look at the opposite of the situation is Ryan Nugent-Hopkins for me. There's a guy that we gave the contract. We loaded the bag up for him right away. And from 21, 22, the guy was making $6 million a year on this team. And now in his prime, he didn't need a massive overpay to keep him on the team. And so therefore, we got a good deal out of him. So people need to stop comparing it to contracts that don't have the same parallels. They don't have the same numbers to them. But I mean, as we know, that will never stop and that will never change.
And, in a way, it's kind of, you can look at it very cynically in a way too, by saying, well, the fact that the Edmonton Oilers traded for Duncan Keith allowed Chicago to open up the cap to acquire and then sign Seth Jones, which in turn led to the Oilers having to lock up Darnell Nurse long term. So, if you want to be really cynical about the situation, that's one way you can look at it, right? Like, the Oilers are going to Oiler at the end of the day, right?
Fucking Keith deal keeps biting us in the ass.
All right. And there's also, if we're talking about the cap, which I think we should get into in a second here, it's worth noting they got 2 more years with dead cap space from Sexy Reg Sekera and Milan Lucic, and then $2.25 million comes off the books in 2023-24. So I want to get into the cap situation because the Oilers, this was the summer of Ken, and he spent a lot of money this summer because he had a lot of space to do it. And we'll get into that in a second. But boys, I need to tell you first about Cornerstone Insurance. You know you want to hear about it. Of course you do. Because you need insurance products to make sure that you're properly covered, whether you need auto, residential, commercial, life insurance, or just filing a claim. Our friends at Cornerstone have been doing it for 90 years and 4 generations. Cornerstone is here for you. They are a family and employee-owned business here in Edmonton, and they want to help. On the left-hand side of the screen, there's a button for Citizens of the Nation. Click that. Get yourself a little discount. Maybe do a bundle plus the Citizens of the Nation discount. All of a sudden, you've got a couple of extra shekels in your jeans. You're going over to DoorDash to get yourself something delicious. See how this works? Cornerstone Insurance. Hit them up, cornerstoneins.ca. Again, that's cornerstoneins.ca. Also, I want to tell you guys about a 5-star review that came in this morning, it looks like, from NZ Oily Boys fan. So I would imagine that's in New Zealand. Shout out to you, sir. I give this 6 stars if I could. If you're a fan of the Oily Boys, then this podcast is for you. You just feel like the quiet one of the boys having beers and talking hockey. Top shelf product. So thank you very much. If you want to leave us a review, I encourage you to. I will read the bad ones. I told Rick he shouldn't be on the podcast last week. You said that, not me, but I told Rick.
And now he's not.
See, now he's gone.
Good one. Whoever sent that in.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Okay.
He'll be back next week, probably. Leave us a review. Wherever you get your podcast from, Apple Podcasts is where I'm reading right now. Check it out. All right, let's talk about the Oilers cap situation. This Darnell Nurse deal, essentially, he's got 1 more year left on his current bridge deal, and then the contract kicks in. So essentially what Ken Holland did, give or take a few $100,000, is he essentially just shuffled the money from Mikko Koskinen over to Darnell Nurse. Yes? Yeah. More or less?
Pretty much. When you look at next offseason, the Oilers are projected to have about $7.8 million in cap space. That, of course, is with Mike Smith still under contract. On the blue line, they'd have Nurse, Keith, Barry, Ceci, and Bouchard under contract. So they'd have their 6 D-men already locked up for next year. And then up front as well, you got McDavid, Draisaitl, Hyman, Nuge, Cassian, Fogle, Derek Ryan, and Devin Shore. So that's 8 guys already locked up there. With that $7.8 million, you need to sign Puljujarvi and then whatever the Yamamoto deal ends up looking like. So, I mean, really, if Puljujarvi has another big year, he could push like $3-4 million, I bet, on his next deal. Yamamoto, let's put him around 2. So let's split the difference and say it's $5.5 million for those 2 guys. Look at me doing all this competent math. The Oilers next season might only have like $2.2 million in money to spend. Granted, Clefbaum on LTIR could open up another 4, so that changes things. But still, like, not a lot of room to make improvements going forward, but their roster's kind of set. So it's an interesting spot. Like, the team we're looking at right now will, in all likelihood, be their team for the next 2 seasons.
And if you also look at it, sorry, Dan, cut you off. If you also look at it too, in the sense of maybe if you need some space, trading Cassian with only 2 years left on his deal at 3.2 is more palatable for somebody than trading for 3. Yeah. You know what I mean? Maybe he has a bounce back year this year, or at least close to a bounce back year. I don't know. Maybe that
also
would
trade Tyson Barrie as well. $4.5 million. You know, you could free that up, right?
He does have no trade protection in that deal. So, like, I mean, it's not the most insane idea.
So, I think there are options to free up some cap space a little bit. I don't know. They're going to be tight again, though. There's no question about it. But like Tyler said, the interesting part is the important pieces are already locked up for the most part. Again, we're talking Puljujarvi. He could come in and be like, all right, now you got to pay the big man. And if he earns it, he earns it, you know? But the bulk of the roster is essentially tied up.
Don't forget, if Duncan Keith retires this offseason, we will get like $7 million.
That's true. Space. That's true. So if he develops an allergy to his equipment, all that cap hit goes back to Chicago. I don't think it'll happen, but it could happen.
We can't forget. We have to be the podcast that keeps that going.
Yes, just in case. Puckpedia had the details on that. Go check them out on Twitter at Puckpedia, or just ask questions. Heart's good with that stuff. Another thing I wanted to ask you guys, because we didn't get a chance to talk about it last week, is the Warren Foegele contract. 3 years, $2.75 million. He's coming in, going to be doing his first year in Edmonton. Though the interesting thing about that is he was already working out with a bunch of the boys anyway, so he knows them. He's going to be a comfortability factor there. What do you guys think of that deal for Warren Foegele?
Zach, I want to actually throw this one over towards you. Like, I saw an interesting comparison from someone on Twitter, and I forget who it was, but they said Warren Foegele plays like a younger Zach Hyman. And like, it got me thinking, like, could the Oilers have Zach Hyman and like the next Zach Hyman already waiting? Like, how much do the numbers really like what Fogle does? Like, is this contract is 2.75? Could that be like a real bargain in the next 2 years?
Absolutely, it could. Like, I think Warren Foegele has quietly been one of the stronger players, on that Carolina team for the last couple of years. They love their analytics out in Carolina, and there's a reason why Warren Foegele was a big part of that team. And, the reason they traded him was because they couldn't come to an agreement on a contract. I'm a huge fan of Warren Foegele. I think he does everything right, and he's exactly what the Oilers are looking for from a middle six forward. He's a bigger body. He's got good point production at 5-on-5. He can kill wheels. Penalties. He's got wheels. He's really strong on the forecheck as well. So, I think there's a lot to like, and I think he's one of those guys, that can grow into a larger role with this team. Don't be surprised if he knocks on the door for top 6 minutes this year. Like, he is that kind of a player who can do that. So I think it's a really good contract, actually. I'm a pretty big fan of it. 25 years old right now, so you're buying into some UFA time there for him. But I think there's a lot of reasons to be a fan of this deal, because it's really a pretty cost-effective contract, all things considering.
This has nothing to do with anything, but one of my favorite things that I've been doing all summer is tweeting ridiculous shit at Bob Stauffer anytime he tweets stuff. And my phone is kind of going right now because I got some buddies that are just like, what is your deal with this right now? What are you doing? And it's just funny to me. I don't know. Back to Warren Foegele. If you're listening to this and you haven't really done a deep dive on Warren Foegele, I'll be writing about this tomorrow for Random Thoughts for Oilers Nation for Saturday. I encourage you do a deep dive on Warren Foegele. Watch the highlights. This guy is a bull in a china shop sometimes, and he's going to bring a flavor to the Oilers forward group that they haven't really had. And I agree with Ken Holland when he said the Oilers right now are a rush team, but they need to find ways to maintain the zone a little bit more once they're in there. And Foegele is a guy that's going to be able to help with that. And I also think, like Zach said, he can slide up in the roster in the lineup if he needs to. I'm excited to see what he does in his first year. He's got a good opportunity to play with a team that's on the way up, in my opinion, and maybe even play with one of the elite centers on this group too. Tyler, you're smiling.
I do. I really like the deal. I think I like the addition of Fogle as well. Like, it's starting to grow on me more. And I think a part of that too is that in August, when there's not a lot of shit happening and you're just sitting here thinking about this team all the time, like, it's Kool-Aid. We're getting a Kool-Aid season, right? It's the cycle of the Oilers off season where you start to convince yourself that maybe Mikko Koskinen will be better this year. And the little depth adds, convince yourself Joakim Nygard can work his way into the top 9. Like, that's just kind of where I'm at. But I do think, like, especially hearing Zach talk about it and kind of seeing how the numbers break down, like, it's easy to be excited about a guy like Fogle.
Dan, what do you think about Warren Foegele? First of all, the McLovin GIFs are a gift for the next 3 years. Thank you for that.
It's a beautiful thing. For me, I actually just saw on Twitter while we were recording that Stauffer is saying he could see Leon and Connor playing together for 30 or 40% of the year. And
I got that on the list.
The only way I see that kind of making sense is if Fogle is in your top 6 mix, and whether he's playing up with them or it's Hyman, Draisaitl, and McDavid, and then you got Fogle, Nugent Hopkins, and either Puljujarvi or Yamamoto, depending on what mix you want there. Like, I mean, Puljujarvi and Fogle together would be big body hockey with Nuge passing the puck around to those two guys. So there's some exciting elements that a Warren Foegele brings to your forward group. And I think that's kind of been the running theme for this entire offseason for the Oilers, is versatility in that forward group to be able to make moves and change stuff around as needed.
So if you were to go McDavid, Draisaitl, Fogle, Nugent Hopkins, Hyman, Puljujarvi, McLeod, Yamamoto, and flip or maybe Benson on the left side there, then your fourth line's Derek Ryan, Archibald, and Cassian. That's a pretty nasty sounding forward group.
I got to say, I think this is the deepest on paper. This is the deepest forward group the Oilers have had since the 07 Cup run. I really do. Like, you look at this group top to bottom, it is a really nice forward group, I think.
I go further than that, Zach, and I say since Messier's been here. And it's just simply because we have Connor and Leon on the team. There was just nobody in 06 that could match Connor and Leon. And while I agree with you, that team was deep, that you just can't match that top talent unless you had a Messier on this team. But it's 100% true. in that, and it's not gambles. It's not hoping that Thomas Tatar will return to form. It's not hoping that Joachim Nygard is going to be the guy that we find in Europe and has a great career. We have guys here with pedigree, with results, with the guys that they're going to be playing with now, that kind of thing. And
we have Kyle Turris.
And you always have Kyle Turris as an option.
I think it's going to be interesting to the versatility, the line juggling that happens this year. I saw some people were really upset about Stauffer saying he could see 30-40% of Leon McDavid together. And people were really upset about it. But what I think is the interesting part is, let's say you put Connor and Leon together and Leon's playing on the left side. All right, maybe Puljujärvi's just parked on the right side where he was all year last year. And all of a sudden, Zach Hyman's the one digging pucks out and stuff for the second line with Nuge and Yamamoto. There's options now that weren't necessarily there before. And that doesn't even account for Warren Foegele being in the mix as well. So it's going to make for some interesting line combos. And it's only August 6th today as we're recording this. And Oilers fans are in fine form already because we have got some problems. If you follow Twitter, best part is you just want to enjoy your summer. Maybe don't go on Twitter. Maybe don't go on Twitter if you believe in the Oilers.
Everyone.
Yeah, or just like follow things like, gardening
daily
accounts
cat
or something.
video.
Yeah. Who wouldn't want to watch some puppies?
Have a second Twitter account that's your off-season account where you just like only follow like topics that aren't related to the Oilers and stuff.
And just schedule in a tweet once a day.
Yeah.
If you are setting up a off-season account, Tyler, what is the number one thing on your off-season account? What are you following, I should say?
The Toronto freaking Blue Jays, baby.
No, there's
That's
no
Jays Nation. Yeah, I don't do anything outside of sports. You know that. You know I'm a very one-dimensional human.
Zach, what's the first thing going on your off-season Twitter account?
Gifts of cats.
Mm-hmm. You're a cat guy. Got a cat at home. Guy. Dan, what about you? What's going on your off-season account?
Well, I don't like to jump from too much happiness to other happiness, so I go with politics. Politics is my second account.
Yeah, just if you want to keep things really negative 365, you just load up on politics. It's great.
The mayoral election is really making me happy.
Yeah. And you know what I like? My off-season account, nothing but reality dating shows. That's it. I saw that there's a good pick.
Have you caught up on Love is Blind?
Well, I don't, you know what, Zach? I don't care about the reunion shows. Like, because chances are, like, I got told by a couple of friends, oh, there's Love is Blind reunions coming up. And I was like, I don't really care about that because, frankly, I don't remember who any of them are except the one chick and the one dude. That's like
the one that proposed to like two different people.
Well, the one guy, and she kept saying, he's 10 years younger than me. He's 10 years younger than me. I don't.
Good old Mark.
Those are the only ones I remember. So a reunion show means nothing to me. But what does mean something to me is that there's a new season of Love is Blind, supposedly being loaded up to Netflix here shortly. Too Hot to Handle. Fantastic. Great show. I saw they loaded a Brazilian version and they overdubbed it so you don't have to know Portuguese. Hilarious. And also the furry dating one. What was that called? Sexy Beast. Great stuff. Great stuff. And Tyler, you'll like this. New season of 90 Day Fiancé the other way. So my off season's full, boys. This is what I'm doing.
No time for anything else.
So Bag Milk does have a second account that he runs, and it is exclusively dating shows.
No, see, I think the funny thing is I just tweet about dating shows from my actual account, and people go, what the fuck is wrong with you? All the time. And
Stick to sports.
It makes me happy. A couple of things. Patrick Russell. What? We loved him. He signed in Sweden.
No. All we wanted was one goal, Patrick.
And don't you remember he had that one goal and got called off? Like just the worst luck.
And didn't he score in the summer return game against the Calgary Flames?
Yeah, I think so.
Something
like that. It was either against the Flames or Chicago. I got to pull it up now because I got to see it.
Yeah, so it was something like that. But it was actually, if you find his post on Instagram, and I'll link it in the article in Oilers Nation, he wrote a really nice goodbye to the Edmonton Oilers and the Bakersfield Condors, just thanking them for everything for the last 5 years. It was nice to read. It was no hard feelings from Patrick Russell. I wish him the best over in Sweden.
Who's he signing? Linköping. Linköping?
We're going to have to get somebody to check in on Tyler's Swedish there. Before we get to hot and cold performers there, though, I need to bring up the Nathan MacKinnon thing that came up this week, because as it turns out, Nathan MacKinnon is a big diet guy, and he doesn't like when his teammates are eating bullshit during the season. And Tyler, who was it that did an interview over in Russia or something?
Wasn't it Zadorov?
I've got some of the quotes and things that, like, apparently he pays $50,000 a year for a dietologist. I didn't even know that was a thing. I knew it. I assumed it was, you know. He's got a doctor, physiotherapist in-house during the season that pays him $1,000 a day. He has his own chef that he pays $100,000 a year. So Nathan MacKinnon eating well over there. What do you guys think about that? Like, when guy is so into the job, so into what he puts in his body, so into the fitness aspect of it, that it kind of pushes his teammates in either to get on board or get the fuck out. I kind of like it, to be honest.
Look, you're getting paid millions of dollars to be at the top of your game as a professional athlete. If you are not doing what Nathan MacKinnon is doing and trying to maximize every single aspect of your life to become the best hockey player, the best athlete you can be, as far as I'm concerned, you're doing it wrong. You've got enough money and enough resources to invest in yourself that way. And hey, there's a reason why Nathan MacKinnon is one of the best players in the entire damn league, and it's because of stuff like that.
For me, like, when you're there at the rink, like, that's your job. And like Zach said, you are paid very, very well to go do that job. And I think for a leader like MacKinnon to hold his teammates accountable and say, like, listen, you guys aren't going to eat like shit. You're not going to do all this nonsense and fill yourself up with crap when you're at work. I think that's like a totally reasonable thing. Like, the memes that have come out of it are absolutely fucking hilarious. Like, they're so good. The one where it's like Alex Burakovsky offers him ice cream and it's like the InfoWars guy swearing the whole time was the funniest thing I saw on the internet all week. But like, all jokes aside, I think it's good. Like, have a leader who holds everyone accountable like that. You're at work. If you want to eat it when you go home, eat it when you go home, but don't be sitting in your stall eating like a fucking chocolate bar.
He talks about that specifically, Tyler. The quote was from this interview: guys, if you want to eat that crap, you have the off season for that. When you come here, there will be none of that because we're winning the cup. Also in the interview, he said, MacKinnon made pros out of our entire team in Colorado. That's one of the reasons that Colorado got such an improvement in performance over the last couple of years. So he's dedicated. He wants it. And personally, I like it. I don't know.
Hey, look, this isn't the 70s anymore when you're walking into the dressing room, lighting up a cigarette and cracking open a cold one right after the game. You know, like the game's evolved so much over the last, 30 years, hell, even in the last 10 years. This kind of stuff is standard. And I think it's hilarious that people are so shocked and surprised that this is what professional athletes are doing these days.
It's like we all watched the MJ documentary and we thought that he's the only one that dedicated to winning, He's the only athlete that likes to be a hard ass to his teammates. Sorry, Dan, I cut you off.
That's okay. That's what I was going to say is that we always talk about the debate of who's better. Is it Wayne Gretzky? Is it Sidney Crosby? Is it Connor McDavid? The one edge that the Connor McDavids, the Sidney Crosbys of the world had is our biology science has caught up to the rest of the sciences when it comes to being an athlete. And so these guys are absolutely finely tuned machines when it comes down to it. And, we've seen it with our own team. When you're not the perfect finesse all the time, you're going to get trouble for it. And so, whether that's fair or not, but this has been the reputation for Nathan MacKinnon since the dawn of time. I lived in Halifax. I don't know if you guys knew that. But I lived in Halifax around the time.
Check the records on that.
Yes, when Nathan MacKinnon and Jonathan Drouin were lighting it up for the Halifax Mooseheads, and I heard rumors back then of MacKinnon showing up to the rink at 6 a.m. every day and was pissed off at a guy like Jonathan Drouin who wouldn't put in the same amount of work that he did. And you look at those two guys' careers now, and they could not be more different. Even just with the results to this point. I know Drouin has now seen a deeper playoff run than Nathan MacKinnon, but it wasn't really necessarily his effort that did that. So it is, you're right, Zach. It is a really interesting kind of peek behind the curtain for a guy like Nathan MacKinnon, who is the second best player in the league, I think everybody would say. And obviously he's earned that spot, and he has really worked to get to that spot.
So what you're saying is that in Halifax, Jonathan wasn't Drouin the work?
Yeah.
Okay, Gene. Easy.
Thank you. There we go.
That's nice.
Another thing I want to talk about just from around the league. This one actually surprises me. I'm kind of shocked that we're still talking about it here at the beginning of August, is that Jack Eichel is still a Buffalo Sabre, whether he wants to be or not. Tyler, you wrote about it in the rumors blog that you do every week at Oilersnation.com. What's going on with Jack Eichel? Are you as shocked as I am that he's still a Sabre?
Yeah, I'm stunned. Like, how do you not get this deal done in the first few days of the offseason? You have the most prized piece on the trade market, and you cannot, like, one of the most prized trade pieces in the last decade of the NHL, ever in the NHL, you could argue. Like, this is a legit top-line franchise center who is like under the age of 25, who wants out, and you can't find a move for this guy. I asked Frank about it on Buy or Sell in the most recent episode of the DFO Rundown, and he said he thinks Eichel will still be a Sabre into September. And Frank said the next pressure point will come when Eichel has to walk back into that locker room. And will Eichel report for camp? They're not letting him have the surgery he wants. It's past the point now where I think if he got it, he would miss the beginning of the season yet. Like, it's just been such a shit show. And the price is probably only going down right now. So I'm stunned that the Sabres did not take the best offer they could before the NHL entry draft, because it probably would have included a top 15 pick and a pretty good prospect. And now they're sitting here with like a deteriorating asset, which is insane to say that Jack freaking Eichel is a deteriorating asset.
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird.
Well, you know, and it's gambling with a player's health at this point, is it not? Yeah. and a person like not letting him make choices for himself, which
if you don't, so if you're listening to this and you don't know, Tyler, what's going on with the surgery? Jack Eichel wants one thing and the Sabres want another. Yes.
Yeah, so the Sabres doctors won't sign off on a surgery that Eichel wants to have to fix, I think it's discs in his neck. And the surgery is like pretty new. It's not like a common thing. I don't think a hockey player has ever really had it done, which is why the Sabres doctors won't sign off on it. Eichel says he won't play until he gets the surgery. But in the CBA, it says that team doctors have the final say over whatever a player does, right? So in my opinion as well, like if I'm the Sabres and I'm sitting here, and Eichel goes, I am not playing till I get this surgery. And the Sabres go, we don't want you to get this surgery. Okay, well, Eichel doesn't want to play for you anyways. And other teams clearly won't acquire him until he's healthy. So just let him get the damn surgery. He'll be back to 100%. And then you can trade him for a good return. Right now, like trading away a potentially injured or with question marks surrounding his health, trading away that version of Jack Eichel is not going to get you what you need to get in this trade. Not that you're probably going to get any sort of reasonable value anyways now.
Disaster. It's a disaster. I think it's an absolute disaster. I don't know why Buffalo didn't pull the trigger. Like you have to imagine that there was a reasonable enough deal at some point from one of these teams. Like you look at LA, you look at the Rangers, like two of the teams, Anaheim even, you know, they pulled out of it because they're like, we can't wait around on this anymore. They have some really, really, really good prospects in their system. Like just take the best damn package you get and close the book on the era. You know, and last week, I think it was last week, 2 weeks ago. I can't remember. Time is weird to me these days. But Eichel's agents even came out and were like, what the hell's going on here? Like, we've repeatedly asked for trades. It's not happening. Like, it's just such a bad scenario. And yeah, like you mentioned, like, what happens if all of a sudden September rolls around and he's still a part of that organization? Like, if I'm Eichel, I would never step foot back in that locker room ever again.
And like, if you're the Sabres, do you want him back in the dressing room just pissed off all the time? Probably not.
Well, like, okay, let's say Eichel goes, you know what? I'm reporting and I'm playing. Is he still wearing the C for them? Like, how can you let that guy be your captain even? Yeah, it's just such a remarkable shit show out of Buffalo. Yeah. And you know what else is? It's not on the same level, but like fucking Vlad Tarasenko's never playing for St. Louis again, and they can't trade him.
That one too is just as weird to me. Like that one is just as confusing because they exposed him. Then they reportedly had some decent offers for him, and then they didn't trade him. Like, what the hell's going on there? And it's not like the shoulder is a real concern because Frank's been reporting that Tarasenko's got a clean bill of health here. So it just doesn't make sense. Some of the weirdest stuff I've ever seen in the NHL.
Around the horn real quick. Let's take some guesses. Where's Jack Eichel end up? And you can say Buffalo if you want. For the start of the 2021-22 season, Zach, you're filling in on this week's podcast. Where's Jack Eichel going?
I still think he's destined for New York. I still think at some point the Rangers probably make the most sense. I think LA makes sense too, but I think I'm going to stick with the Rangers. There's been just too much smoke around them.
Dan, your guess next. Where's Eichel going?
I think he's staying in Buffalo to start the season, and then I think that we will likely see a surgery at some point during the season.
Please let that happen. Tyler, where do you think he's going?
I'm going to agree with Zach. New York Rangers still number one on my list. I think they got the pieces to get it done. I'm going to throw a bit of cold water on the LA Kings. They still have Kopitar for 3 more years. They just went and signed Philippe Deneau. And then they have the young guys, Turcotte and Byfield, coming up. Not that, you wouldn't love to add Eichel to any team, but I just think they might be happy enough with their current situation. The number 2 team on my list, though, is going to be the Anaheim Ducks. $19 million in current cap space. Down the middle, they are not particularly strong anymore. Yes, they have some future pieces coming up, but if you gave me the choice between, 20-year-old Trevor Zegras or like 24-year-old Jack Eichel, who's proven he can be top 5 in league scoring, I'm taking Jack Eichel still. So I think they have the future pieces, the cap space, and they have Bob Murray has literally just sat on his hands all offseason. Like, I'm looking at this roster. The only thing they did they even make a move? I can't even find like a move that the
Getzlaf, I guess.
That's it. Like, they don't have a new forward, but they don't have a new forward. Like, they literally have done nothing this offseason. I think Bob Murray might be in the best position to make a splash.
I'm going to go off the board here from what you guys said. And I don't actually think it's going to happen, but I also think it's going to happen because they always seem to make this bullshit work. I could see him ending up in Vegas because they somehow do this. And I don't know how they'll do it. And I don't know how they'll clear the cap space or what's going to happen, but I could see him going to Vegas and all of us going, how? Why? What?
People would be big mad.
The only reason I think that might not happen now is because they, for some reason, went out and acquired Evgeny Dadonov. Like, and he has a modified no trade, so they can't even put him back in a deal to Buffalo. Like, they just went and got like an average sort of top 9 winger who's making $5.5 million. So I don't know if they have money anymore to go get Eichel.
Oh man, ping pong boys is where it's at. Ping pong.
Speaking of random obscure sports, I saw something pop up on my Twitter feed as we were sitting here. Shout out to Angus the Corgi from Auburn, Washington, who is the 2021 Corgi race champion of the world.
Nice.
And our boy Angus has gone back to back. So shout out Angus.
Shout out to the Corgis of the world. The thick boys and girls.
One other thing I want to make a note about with Eichel. There's been mention of Calgary being one of those teams. Yep. And I would be fascinated to see that happen solely for the fact that we would get to see Connor McDavid and Jack Eichel going head to head 7-8 times a year for infinity. It would be absolutely amazing. So there's a part of me that hopes Calgary lands Eichel because they would have to give up all of their prospects. And it's not like they have very many in the first place either, right? Like, I don't know if they actually can make the move in the first place, but I want to see it solely for the fireworks of Eichel versus McDavid.
You want to see a team Buffalo 2.0. That's Calgary if they make that transaction, because they're sending away their prospects, which they don't have a lot of. They don't have a defense still, and all of a sudden they're going to go out and make a transaction for a $15 million player. And they're probably going to be sending Matthew Tkachuk back the other way. Like, thank you, please. I would have to think that that's the deal that they would have to make. You don't? I
was texting Flames Nation editor Ryan Pike yesterday, and I asked him about it. I was like, "What do you think? Think Eichel ends up in Calgary?" He says, "Doubt it. Don't think there's any chance, to be honest." But I too would like to see it. Would there be a more unlikable duo than Matt Tkachuk and Jack Eichel on one team, though?
Or Johnny Gaudreau and Jack Eichel?
Yeah. They have the exact same hairstyle, too. They both have this short, curly hair.
So who knows? We'll see. Jack Eichel, I got to tell you, August 6th, 2021, I didn't think we'd still be talking about it. But there he is, still on the board. Maybe we'll have to get Frank Saravalli back on this podcast here at some point and ask Frank what's going on over there. Frank knows. Frank always knows. All right, Tyler, time to get your buttons ready. Oh, you don't have any? I'm doing the buttons again? Okay, great. It is time for the Deuce Vodka Hot and Cold Performers of the Week. If you go to deucevodka.com, first up, there he is, Brett Kissel, holding the bottle of Deuce Vodka. Born in a small town, made for the big time. Click on the Find In-Store locator. You can find all the retailers across Alberta that carry it. Grab yourself a bottle, have yourself a Caesar Sunday, and enjoy responsibly, provided that you are of legal drinking age. Mm-hmm. As we do every week, we start off with our veggies. It is time for the Deuce Vodka Cold Performers of the Week. Looking at my screen, who's first? Tyler Yaremchuk, you're up first. Your Deuce Vodka Cold Performer of the Week.
Going to give it to a couple people here, but it's all the hip-hop artists who are sitting on their damn albums. Kanye West is doing 1 million listening parties, but he won't drop Donda. Drake has been teasing Certified Lover Boy for like 18 months. I want these albums. I need new music in my life. My Cold Performer of the Week goes to Drake and Kanye West for sitting on their new albums and not letting us listen to them.
Oh, that's cold.
Good
Next
work.
up on the screen, Mr. Nation Dan, your Deuce Vodka Cold Performer of the Week.
I'm trying to phrase it so that they are a cold performer, but I love that they're doing this. It's the Calgary Flames fans that continue to keep the dream alive that they are going to be able to compete in this division. I'm just you guys are cold. You have no reason to believe that, but I love it, and don't stop it, because that confidence will feed us for the entire cold winter that we're going to have here in Edmonton. And so yeah, Calgary Flames fans, you're my cold performer, hot performer of the week.
Dun 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 dun. Ice, baby. Zach, you're next up. Deuce Vodka Cold Performer of the Week.
My cold performer of the week is this smoke that is still lingering and has now infested my home, bothering the hell out of my eyes and my lungs. I need to go get an inhaler and some Visine drops.
Burr. Dan, you're up next with my button. My Deuce Vodka Cold Performer of the Week is my personal internet. Today seems to be working fine. If you listen to the Real Life podcast on Tuesday, I was reading a review and I just cut out. And that was it. I don't even know if you guys got to hear the end of the review. No idea. Yesterday, we were supposed to do a welcome edition of the podcast. Was I able to? No. Why? Internet. So my internet, you are my Deuce Vodka Cold Performer of the Week.
We have been hoodwinked, bamboozled, led astray, run amok, and flat out deceived.
That was really good.
That is amazing.
Excellent, Dan. All right. Then, Dan, you're back on the clock because I'm stealing the first hot performer of the week. My Deuce Vodka hot performer of the week before any of you motherfuckers take it. The Canadian women's soccer team. I don't know if you woke up this morning and were stressed out to the max like I was way too early. Bringing home the gold. We talked about it a little bit earlier with Steph LeBay, but man, that was a fun game to watch. It was stressful. It was excellent. They want to change the color from bronze. They did that. A gold medal to the ladies soccer team. Winning gold this morning against Sweden. You are my hot performers of the week.
Oh, hot.
Zach, you're next up. Deuce Vodka hot performer of the week.
I'm going to single out Christine Sinclair for my hot performer of the week. It's incredible to see her journey, to see her finally get the gold. I was so excited to see her reactions afterwards. I don't think there's anybody in the world who is more deserving of something like that than Christine Sinclair. So that's my hot performer of the week.
Oh, that's hot. That's so hot. Hot.
What button even is it? All right, my hot performer of the week is going to go to our newest teammate over at Oilers Nation, Caroline Shved. We had her on Real Life earlier this week. It was awesome. She's passionate. She's fired up to be part of the team. She loves her hockey as well. I think everyone who takes in the content that we produce at Oilers Nation is going to love having her around as well. Really fun chat. She's going to get used to the traffic lights and the fact that apparently our bunnies are much larger than they are in Toronto. But Caroline gets my hot performer of the week.
Oh boy. There you go. Dan, you're next up. Deuce Vodka hot performer of the week.
Well, this one's going to go out to a local radio host who, if you missed it, in 2017, I think, created a petition that to have a civilian pavilion
Nathan Fillion Civilian Pavilion
renamed for local legend Nathan Fillion, the Nathan Fillion Civilian Pavilion. Well, I'm happy to announce that just this morning, the city of Edmonton has officially renamed the civilian pavilion at City Hall the Nathan Fillion Civilian Pavilion. And so a shout out to Lauren Hunter of Sonic 102.9 here in Edmonton, award-winning radio host, and now the proud owner of the Nathan Fillion Civilian Pavilion in downtown Edmonton. The idea is 1 in a million. Good job, Lauren. You're my hot performer of the week.
it's getting hot in her. But I want to talk about Lauren for a second too, because this bit, she's been running this bit for a long time now. And she was passionate about it. She talked about it in a way. It's bigger because just this past week, if you haven't seen it, the cast from Suicide Squad jumped in to talk about why we should rename that building the Nathan Fillion Civilian Pavilion. And it's just like, when I was watching it, and there's Idris Elba and Margot Robbie, and they're all talking about it, and you're just like,
John Cena
shit
was allegedly there.
I didn't see him in the video, but I heard he was there. Just to see that she just put in the work on this bit and made it turn into what it was is just pretty incredible. It kind of reminded me of, in a way, the Keep Nuge Forever thing, where you just start something and you talk about it and you talk about it, and then it just kind of takes on a life of its own. And I think Lauren probably has a little bit of that too with this Nathan Fillion Civilian Pavilion, because that's just so funny. It's one of the most amazing things ever. So shout out to Lauren Hunter. I'm glad Dan brought that up because it made me laugh out loud when I saw the video. Really, really good stuff. Just before we wrap, I want to say, if you've got kids and you follow the Oilers Nation on social media, I'm going to have a little treat for you next week, because I ordered 3 copies of all 3 of Zach Hyman's books, and we're going to start the giveaways next week, but you got to be on Twitter. We're going to be doing a retweet and follow contest for the first round. If you're already following, great. But we're going to do a retweet and follow contest early in the week. It's probably going to run it along, but we'll have some books to give away. And I was flipping through them. The illustrations are fun. They're well written. They're fun kids books. So if you've got kids and you want a chance to win these Zach Hyman books, I've got all 3 of them for you. And we're going to have 3 chances for you to win them. So pay attention to our social media for that. I might even include one in a little Photoshop contest. It's been a minute since I've done a Photoshop contest. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited about it. I just can't think of a theme that will lead the Photoshoppers down a dark well of Summer of Rage angriness, I'll figure it out. But again, stay tuned for some giveaways. I've got some cool shit to give away. It's going to be fun. Like I said, if you got kids, you're going to want to read them.
What would Cap Hell look like? Photoshop idea.
Ooh.
That's a good one, actually.
That could be, hang on, Dan. I'm writing that down. What would Cap Hell look like? I'm writing this down. I like that idea.
It's going to get dark.
Screenshot of the Edmonton Oilers Puckpedia page.
Yeah, it's just like, here you go. It's like, all right.
Touché.
Well, stay tuned for that. We've got giveaways coming. Oilers Nation Open, the golf tournament, sold out. So thank you to everybody who wanted to play in that this year. It's going to be a good time. I imagine all of us are out there. Tyler's golfing. 3 of us will probably be doing some cruising, hanging out.
I'm going to be doing some drinking.
Drinking, cruising, hanging out, meeting people, talking to people, shaking babies, kissing foreheads. I don't think that's how that goes. But we'll do it all at the Oilers Nation Open. That's coming up later this month. And lastly, just another reminder, please leave us a review. I'll read them. Again, you guys told me you wanted Rick off the podcast. No Rick this week. What else do you want? Huh? Snap your fingers and I deliver. That's what happens around here. And I also want to end off by saying thank you to Sherwood Ford, DoorDash, Cornerstone Insurance, and Deuce Vodka for making this all happen. And most importantly, for you, the listener, for welcoming us into your ear holes and letting us massage your brain feelings. This is it. Oilersnation Radio, episode 152 is done. Darnell Nurse got the bag. Have a good weekend, everybody.
Shout out Nathan Fillion Civilian Pavilion.
Thanks for listening to Oilers Nation Radio, delivered by DoorDash. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and give us a follow on Twitter and Instagram.